everyone. This is update for September 30th, 2024, day 950 of the war and of the date update. Apologize. Also catch up for September 29, 28, and 27. Again, apologies for not making video yesterday, but I'm doing it today. So I'm gonna start with general and more strategic and geopolitical military update, and then I'm going to switch to the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine. So probably everyone is seeing this news about Israel invading into South Lebanon. But one thing I just want to mention, a couple things, is from Iran's perspective, all of these organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah, they essentially expendable tools. So they lose them. That's how they were envisioned in the first place. They were envisioned as tools to, I would say, annoy or terrorize Israel. And so I think probably to many it comes as a surprise that there is no strong Iranian state response, is because this is expendable tools, and second, Iran needs time, and they're really buying time by allowing these two organizations being destroyed while they working on development of their nuclear program and nuclear weapons, which, based on the rumors, obviously nobody knows for sure, they are very close to be done with it, or at least have something. And so from Iran's perspective, they need this time, that this time they're getting nuclear bomb in exchange of destruction of Hezbollah and Hamas, and plus they getting a lot of I would say positive publicity around the world and negative stance towards Israel, which may not matter right now, but in the long run it's extremely important point. The other part that probably not being paid attention to is that Israel's economy is in really bad shape and getting worse, obviously due to the war. There is no any other reason for that, to the point that Israel's credit rating was reduced a couple times by all of the three major rating agencies, S&P, Moody's, and Fitch. And the next sort of the next cut to the credit rating would mean that Israel is going to be a non-investment grade country. What this means in the practical terms, then it's going to be very hard to finance debt that is used to finance war. So basically, it's going to be very hard to borrow, and the borrowing costs are going to be very expensive, especially right now, given that the interest rates around the world are pretty high. This really means that premium for non-investment grade, it kind of goes in some ways exponentially higher. Because right now Israel enjoys still investment grade rating, even though it's on the verge of losing it, but still you have relatively favorable interest rates. Once you cross over into this called fallen angel world, then the interest rates skyrocket pretty quickly, pretty significantly, and that will put extremely high strain on Israeli economy and generally ability to continue the war. And this invasion is probably means that Israel is going to be there for a while. That it's not going to be quick walk. I don't know the plans, obviously, but land operation is always much more difficult than airstrikes, which were extremely successful, and I would say they achieved pretty much all of their goals. So it's somewhat unclear what's the point of actually invading, because that's usually the worst. That's how the problem start with land invasion. But nevertheless, so this is I just want to mention about this topic. It's not the main focus, obviously, of the channel, but given that it's obviously extremely popular, I just want to comment on that. Now let's switch to the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine. As a summary, the same trend continues. Ukrainian forces are in really bad shape and getting worse by day. It's I would say prospect of 1917 moment in Ukraine is becoming more and more real, and I think with some relatively large collapse on the front line, that moment may come. It's not far away, and now let's walk through the actual front line so you can see where the problem areas are. And I'm gonna do it in a clockwise fashion, the way I always do, and we're just gonna start with Kursk region, where things are pretty much the same. There's not much going on. The only confirmed gain by Russian forces is this village of Vuhledar, so they gain control of this village. Beyond that, there is not much going on here. Let's look at the situation north and northeast of Kharkiv. The area around Lugansk is on pause. However, Russian forces attempted a large-scale armored attack in Vovchansk, and so it was not successful. The main reason why it was not successful because the proportion of thin armored vehicles was too high relative to tanks. So basically, there was not enough tanks to support it, and so all of those AFVs were essentially destroyed. This is actually what I mentioned as a general trend, and I mentioned about this trend a while ago. But what is Russian command is doing at pretty much all sections of the front line, or where they have ability to do so, obviously, because there is a constraint, they create this armored fists, and they try to ram through Ukrainian defensive lines. And the number of armored vehicles could be easily 20, 30, 40 units at a time. The only sort of question how bad it's going to be is the ratio of tanks relative to AFVs. If you have pretty much most of the AFVs, then it fails, like it failed in Vovchansk. If you have a higher ratio of tanks, then it's usually successful. And this ramming strategy is being employed more and more frequently at wider front line, pretty much everywhere where Russian command has resources to do so, as I stated. These attacks are pretty hard to repel because due to their nature that you have, let's say, 30, 40 vehicles moving at you at the same time, because it's simultaneous. That's, if I were to sort of boil it down to in a very primitive way, because it's simultaneous attack by 30, 40 vehicles that are shooting at you at the same time, high power, usually doesn't end well for the defending party. Now let's move to North Luhansk section of the front line. General trend here continues. Ukrainian forces slowly but surely losing ground. So in this case, they lost control of village Makiyivka, as you can see here. So essentially, at this point, Russian troops pretty much control all of the east bank of, I think this is Zherebets River, with exception of this sort of southern corner where there is Azov that's defending, and it's definitely more better motivated unit than the rest of them. And obviously, as you can see in this sort of northern sector, Russian troops are essentially close to Skil River, which is going to be, as I mentioned before, it's going to be a problem if they manage to establish, if the Russian troops manage to establish a bridgehead on the western side of the Skil River, which apparently that's what they're heading towards, because that will allow them to use their typical strategy of pincers and squeeze Ukrainian troops from Kupiansk, because they're essentially already on the border, on the eastern side of the Skil River, north of Kupiansk. They just need to do the same south of Kupiansk, then obviously create bridgeheads. So it's going to be a long story, but this is sort of long-term objective of Russian command here. Now let's look at the situation on the North Donbass front line. The northern part is more or less stable relative to other sections of the front line. Again, I think main reason for it being stable is just Russian command does not have enough resources to attack everywhere. Similar situation in the southern sector, Russian attacks, but so far Ukrainian forces managed to keep them at bay. Now let's look at the central Donbass front line, where things really, I would say, going from bad to worse. The main actually problem is obviously Vuhledar, but also Russia's attacks actually now north of Selydove and south of Selydove, and with the main goal is to move towards southwest, towards this Dachne, and then from the south move also towards Dachne, and essentially collapse this whole section of Ukrainian front line. And after that, there is no good defensive positions. Terrain is not, I would say, conducive to successful defense, or at least the way Ukrainian army is doing it. They unlikely to be able to hold on successfully to the ground once they lose this whole sort of last urban area in the Donbass region, because of this Pokrovsk, Selydove, Kurakhove, and Vuhledar. This is essentially last defensive line. After that, it's pretty much open field, and as I stated, ability to have successful defense for Ukrainian army. I'm not saying in general, specifically in the condition Ukrainian army is, skill set, the level of command, the quality of soldiers, all of that combined, it means that Ukrainian army is unlikely to be able to successfully put successful resistance for the in the sort of medium term and long term. And that's why I was mentioning that if this, or when this, probably I would say when more than if, this section of the front line completely collapses, that may trigger 1917 moment in Ukraine. We'll see. But it certainly will create significant political tension. There is already sort of first signs of that, but they are so far very mild. But I think that this collapse that's in the works will precipitate all of that. So so far there's no meaningful moves by Russian troops in sort of around, let's say around Selydove. The only thing that they moved a little bit north of Selydove, so they again creating pincers around Selydove, so they moving north and then south of Selydove. So essentially they will eventually create a situation where Ukrainian troops will be squeezed out, similar to what's actually going on right now in Vuhledar, which is sort of in very late stages. And let's actually look at the situation. So this is situation that I've shown in the prior videos. Things did not change meaningfully. Russian troops continuing their assault on Tsukuryne, which probably will be lost fairly soon, probably in 2-3 days. Similar situation is going on with Izmailivka. So essentially, Russian troops really moving westwards around this artificial lake that's really exists actually to support power generating station in Kurakhova. But so the point is, Russian troops are moving straight west, which then allows them to actually kind of kill two birds with one shot, because then they can turn south and create encirclement, and then they can turn north and create encirclements around Selydove. So it'll be a very difficult situation for Ukrainian command. It's already very difficult, as you can imagine. But now let's look at the situation around Vuhledar, which is pretty bad. This was prior video on 26. This is what's sort of where it is right now. So essentially, Ukrainian forces control just kind of like a narrow strip inside of Vugledar. They squeezed from two sides, from the eastern side and from the western side. And so this is really at this point not defendable. It's continuing this defense is really creating just extremely high level of losses. And so that's why Ukrainian forces probably will withdraw with heavy losses from Vuhledar. So at this point, even like withdrawal from Vuhledar will lead to significant losses, because essentially Russian troops kind of created like a death valley here, in Vuhledar, but also north of Vuhledar, where you don't have protection by the buildings, and you essentially in a flat field where from both sides Russian troops are shooting at you, including even not only mortar and artillery fire, but at this point it's so narrow that they can use small arms, machine guns to shoot at withdrawing Ukrainian troops, individual soldiers. Once Vuhledar completely lost, it's going to be pretty quick retreat all the way towards Bukha and Novoukrayinka. So this front line is not going to hold. This territory will be lost pretty quickly. So as you can see, this I would say this is becoming like a snowball that's gaining momentum, negative momentum from Ukrainian perspective here. Now let's look at the situation on Zaporizhya front line. Things relatively quiet here. Some Russian pressure north of Urozhaine is sort of typical, and some pressure in the area of Robotyne, but no major movements, and it's let's say low scale pressure. This is not the focal point of Russian command. And then the last section of the front line along the Dnipro River, things here are quiet. It's, as I call it, strategic dead end here for both sides for now. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye-bye.